Last week, during the Democratic National Convention, the news broke that Miles Taylor, a former top official in Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security, was not only declining to endorse his former boss, Donald Trump, for re-election, but that he was actively supporting Joe Biden's candidacy for president. Now, this week, a second top former DHS official under Trump has decided to endorse Joe Biden. Elizabeth Neumann voted for Donald Trump in 2016 before going on to serve as Assistant Secretary for Threat Prevention and Security Policy at the Department of Homeland Security. This week, she announced her intention to vote for Biden in a video message in which she claims that Trump's racist rhetoric made it harder for her to do her job at DHS.
I and my leadership at the Department of Homeland Security were very clear that we found the ideology behind white nationalism, white supremacy to be a growing threat. A very common refrain that I was asked was, does the president's rhetoric make your job harder? And the answer is yes. The president's actions and his language are, in fact, racist.
Neumann is not only supporting Joe Biden in the upcoming election, but has joined forces with her former colleague, Miles Taylor, to form a new group called the Republican Political Alliance for Integrity and Reform, which will recruit other former Trump officials to support Joe Biden this November. And joining us now is Elizabeth Neumann. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My question for you is, the policies specifically out of the department in which you served are notoriously cruel, and they've been some of the most brutal and heinous of the entire administration. What made you stay when you heard the ProPublica video with children wailing after they've been separated from their parents?
Well, thanks for having me, Nicole, and that's a great question. My background and my area of expertise is in the counterterrorism and threat prevention lane. I did not work that much on immigration, but I have to tell you, when that situation arose and we saw children and families separated, that was a very challenging time. I think that I can speak myself and a number of people that are still fighting on the inside, that there is a sense that if you're not there, you holding things together, it would be worse. So there was often a tension of what you were seeing and trying to stop and maybe weren't able to stop. And then when is it time to go? And for me, made that decision at the beginning of this year and left in April because I could not support the president's policies.
Ms. Neumann, it's Rachel Maddow here in New York. Thank you for speaking out publicly about why you left the administration. We know a lot of people have left because of dissatisfaction with their work and with the administration. Not a lot of people have put words to it and explained it so the rest of us can know, and that's an act of bravery. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask about something that you said in the tape that you made for the Republican voters against Trump, in which you said that between January and March, there were good public servants who were trying to do their job to prepare the country for COVID, and that the president was telling them to stop doing that work, to stop trying to fight the virus, basically because he saw it as a distraction and he thought it would hurt his reelection campaign. Can you put a little meat on the bones of that and tell us what you mean about the president telling public servants to stop that work?
Sure. And this is a challenge in probably any number of policy spaces, but it's just so particularly grievous in the area of COVID. You had emergency managers, public health professionals, all raising the alarm in January. The Department of Homeland Security has a senior leadership group. It met multiple times beginning in January, and I'm assuming it's continuing to do so, but has been doing so throughout this pandemic. And in those conversations, you're briefed on what the status of the threat is, in this case, a pandemic, what the actions are occurring throughout the government, what do we need to do within DHS. And one of the things that I asked some of the experts is, and this is probably the late January timeframe, do we think this is coming here? Is this real, or is this going to die out like SARS or MERS? And the answer that I received is, we hope it goes away, but this thing seems to be much more resilient than those viruses, and we expect it to be here. The travel ban on China helps us a little bit. It gives us a little bit more time to prepare, but it doesn't. It's not going to prevent it from getting here. So the purpose of doing that travel restriction was not containment, but giving us more time to prepare. And so they were talking about things like, we need to start the Defense Production Act. We need to build up our PPE. We need to build up ventilation supplies. We need to dust off all of our plans and make sure everybody's educated on what those plans are that have been around for 15 years. So there was an urgency in the system, and there was an effort at various agencies to try to move quickly with urgency. But what we saw publicly from the president was a continual dismissal that this was not a real thing, that this was going to go away, all the way to this is a hoax. It's made up to try to make it harder for his campaign. And that sowing those seeds of doubt ended up hurting us drastically in the public side in terms of not knowing who to believe in that communication. But inside the government, it had a similar chilling effect. I watched senior officials kind of struggle with how do I lead here? I need to protect my employees. I need to prepare if this gets here. But the president just said very publicly that there's no concern. We don't need to do anything. We're fine. So I found that there was this tension, a chilling effect with his public rhetoric and how it impacted the ability to prepare.
Ms. Newman, I want to thank you as well. This is Joy Reid. Thank you so much for being here tonight. My question kind of builds off of what Nicole asked earlier. We know that there's been a through line in policy from the Muslim ban to wanting to close the border potentially by violent means. And we've read it from Mr. Taylor about saying, well, I'll pardon you if you commit crimes by doing that violently. Obviously, locking up children in cages and denying people, refugees, access to the country. There is a through line there of white nationalism. And I wonder, just having been inside, Donald Trump isn't doing these things by himself. Do you get the sense, there are the Stephen Millers who are, vehement advocates against non-white immigration. Did you get a sense that there is a core of white nationalism inside the administration, people who have that ideology and who are there because they think they can advance it? Or do you think that these things are taking place because of career expediency or apathy? What's the balance here between those two things?
That's a really excellent question. I have to say, early 2017, I just assumed that the rhetoric we were seeing, the behavior we were seeing was from an inexperienced group, that they didn't understand how to govern, what rhetoric and how it takes on a different effect when you're sitting in the White House. And I gave them a lot of grace or room to grow, and was deeply disappointed at what I saw. And I came to realize that there is some design to it. And I personally believe, I don't know any man's heart, but from what I experienced and some of the people I worked with, I do think that there are people that hold a white nationalist viewpoint, and that is actually impacting those policies. Some of those policies have good security means, but when you poison it with this white nationalism, it kind of ruins the ability to do it well.
Elizabeth Newman, former senior official in the Department of Homeland Security and the Trump administration, now saying she is supporting Joe Biden for president, speaking out about what she believes is dangerous about the current president. Ms. Newman, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.